This is my off-road Camaro, and I'm building it to conquer the Texas Overland Trail, but with a twist, because this is my daily driver, and my only car. My name is TheSixSpeed. In this video, I'm going to show you my build, why it makes sense, why you would want to do this yourself, and how we're going to prove that it works. Welcome to part 1 of the Off-Road Camaro versus the Texas Overland Trail. Now, I hear what you're saying. This dude is crazy. Why would he do this to his only car, his daily driver? Is he stupid? And just a little bit. But the real reason I did this to my only car is because this trip to the Texas Overland Trail isn't just for views. I'm doing this to not only prove to Chevrolet that the people want an affordable off-road muscle car, but to also test out all the off-road mods that I've done to this so far. That way I can do what I always dreamed of. Not just make a cool off-road sports car, but to give you the ability to make this yourself for under $2,000. Camaro not included. Now, let's get into the good stuff. What is the Off-Road Camaro 4x2? The Off-Road Camaro 4x2 is a lifted and off-road modified Camaro LT1 V8 with a 6-speed manual transmission. It's been lifted nearly 2 inches courtesy of a 1.5-inch spacer lift, as well as larger diameter all-terrain tires sitting on reinforced wheels. But why? Why make an off-road Camaro? Well, like some of you, I grew up playing games like, Dirt 2, Dirt 3, Need for Speed, and The Crew. God, I remember when the E3 trailer for that game dropped, and I thought to myself, wow, an off-road Camaro, that's so cool. I wonder if anyone's built anything like that in real life. Only to discover, to my immense day-ruining disappointment, no one had. So I kept this dream of mine locked away, saddened that a true off-road sports car was just something that existed in video games. So 10 years go by, and I had bought myself a 2022 Camaro LT1, my first V8 muscle car. And I was in the process of making, your average street and strip build, full bolt-on status. And I mean, it was fast. At its most potent, this car was making 460 horsepower to the wheels. And if we're measuring by the shaft, like the magazines do, that means this car was producing more than 500 horsepower. That being said, although my Camaro was definitely faster, it just didn't make me happy. Because as it always is with making a fast car, there's always somebody faster. I just stopped caring. That is, until I saw this picture. This picture is of someone taking their new 6th gen Camaro on all-terrain tires, off-roading with a bunch of Subarus on a trail. I was floored, gobsmacked. My flabber was indeed gasted. There were people out there that wanted the exact same thing that I did, to have an off-road modified sports car to go on all sorts of adventures with. The owner of this off-road Camaro, the first one, was a man by the name of Gibbs Emphasis, a madman and a true pioneer. So I messaged him on Instagram and I asked him about his build, and to my delight, he was incredibly happy to share his findings. He had told me what wheels that he had, what all-terrains he had fitted, the size, the pros and the cons, and his experiences, like he had done rallycross with his Camaro. He'd even camped with it.
Okay, I think I found it here. I think this is it, actually. these mats. Hello. There. Night, everybody.
Using what I learned, I was able to make what you now see before you, the second off-road Camaro. Without him, this build wouldn't be possible. So please check out his channel if you haven't already. He's an incredible person, and I'm so happy that he exists. Now, why is this build called the Off-Road Camaro 4x2 and not something like the Camaro Z71? Well, the reason is because it has to earn it. I did not want to throw the name Z71 or ZR2 on this Camaro without proving that it works. And right now, we are at the very bottom, the most basic mods that you need to consider yourself as having a off-road Camaro, which is just the wheels, the lift, and the tires. They were chosen very deliberately because this build, again, is not just my daily, it's my only car. So these mods need to work without making the Camaro unlivable. It forces me to sweat the small stuff. So let's sweat the small stuff. I'm going to give you the lowdown on all the major parts of this build, and not just what they are, but why I chose them. We're going to be talking about the wheels, the tires, the suspension, and the engine. Let's get started.
3, 2, 1, go!
The wheels are 18x8 convoys from Nomad Wheels. Originally designed for the Land Rover Defender, I chose them because I wanted a smaller, tougher, reinforced wheel with that steely look, but without that steely weight. Because it's made of flow-formed aluminum, it only weighs 31 pounds, the same as stock rear wheels on a Camaro SS. I then had the wheels wrapped in 235/55 R18 Falcon Wild Peak AT trails. I chose them because they're one of the only all-terrains on the market to come with a V speed rating, meaning they're rated for 150 miles per hour. They do this by having a stiffer sidewall. And in the real world, what that means is that your Camaro can still do Camaro stuff, just like this. I also chose this size because they're 1.8% bigger than the stock tires. And that means it's in that sweet spot of having a bigger tire without interfering with the ABS. And it doesn't rub. Lifting the car was a tough job, and I had to get creative. I approached a fabricator in town who made me 1.5-inch spacers for the front struts, rear springs, and the top mounts of the rear shocks. Altogether, that gives me a 1.5-inch lift. To correct the suspension geometry, I got adjustable tow arms from BMR Suspension, as well as adjustable sway bar linkages front and rear that have been modified with longer rods and rod ends. That way they reach the sway bar without preloading it. Combined with the additional chassis bracing, also from BMR, and this handles just like a Camaro should, just lifted. Finally, we have the engine. Just because this is an off-road build doesn't mean it has to be slow. Currently, I have a Rotofab cold air intake, an MST Air Force intake manifold, GPI spark plug wires, a flex fuel sensor, and a fully custom H and X pipe exhaust that mates to the stock headers for maximum ground clearance. With E85, this car puts down 450 wheel horsepower, or 500 shaft horsepower. All of this is kept cool with a DeWitt's direct fit radiator and a forward-mounted transmission cooler. Almost everything that I've done on this car has been made to maintain the great handling that the Alpha chassis is known for, while also being reversible. Why? Because I'm not making this build just to sell it on a marina trailer in a couple of years. Fuck that noise. I'm building this so that you can build this too. Easier and cheaper than I did. This off-road sports car is not meant for the select rich few. This is designed to be shared with everyone. An off-road sports car for the people. Now that we've talked about the major parts to build, let's go ahead and talk about the smaller ones, the stuff that makes my Camaro my Camaro. We start with this little guy, the Argus, a 360-degree remote control spotlight manufactured by Welland, but I've taken to calling him LT. When I first started the build, I wanted to get myself an A-pillar mounted spotlight in the vein of Safari rally cars of yesteryear. While I could have gone with a regular ditch light or an A-pillar mounted spotlight, I chose the Argus because not only does it have full motion 360-degree capability, it does so remotely via this controller I had mounted on the roof, meaning that I didn't have to permanently drill into the A-pillar and risk getting demolished by an airbag. But you know, also because he's just a little guy. Next, I had a backup camera mounted underneath the bow tie in the front bumper to create an off-road approach camera. Camaros are notorious for their poor sight lines, and since visibility off-road is paramount, it reveals things I wouldn't have seen otherwise and helps me choose my lines better than without. Since it's made with Chevy parts, it even interfaces with the stock infotainment system. It comes on automatically at low speeds or manually via a switch. And that brings us to our next new item, a set of metal auxiliary switches mounted just ahead of the Argus controller. Next on our list is our center gauge cluster. This pod here houses my 3 aftermarket gauges, and I chose them to give me an instant readout on how my Camaro is doing at any given time. The leftmost pod houses this temperature gauge from Gauge Innovations, and it uses 3 redundant sensors to track the temperatures for my engine, transmission, and rear differential. It also has a custom startup screen inspired by my favorite first-person shooter, Titanfall 2.
Trust me.
The center pod houses my air-to-fuel ratio gauge from GlowShift, and because this engine is flex fuel capable, I have it set to read lambda. The final pod houses my OBD2 gauge from Aeroforce, and I use it to get a quick readout on all the rest of my values my ECU tracks, as well as having a flex fuel sensor so I can track the ethanol mix I have in my tank at any given time. Right now, I have it set to read my short fuel trims, which is how much fuel the engine is using at any point. I also have it set to read my throttle position in a graph format to really give my Camaro that sci-fi aesthetic that I love so much. Finally, we have these 4x2 decals, the same decals that sit on the back fenders of my Camaro. Now to be clear, this is not something that Chevy sells. This is something I designed myself in Photoshop with a little bit of help from Adobe Illustrator, despite how expensive it is. The purpose of these decals is to signify that this is an off-road focused model without lying about what this car is. It is not a 4x4. It isn't all-wheel drive. It's still rear-wheel drive. So, 4x2. Further, this is just the base off-road model that we're building here. Similar to how on a Chevy truck there's the Silverado 4x4, the Z71, and the ZR2, we are doing the same thing here, and that's why this exists. If we're successful, I'll also be including a decal for every lift kit that I sell, so that you too can have a Camaro 4x2. But if you're not a fan of the 4x2 decal, you could always leave it off and call it something else. I wouldn't blame you. So now that I've shown you what makes up the build, let's talk about the goal. I don't want to be unique. I don't want to be the only off-road Camaro out there. I want this to be an affordable and attainable dream car for everyone, whether you have a V8, V6, 4-cylinder, manual, or automatic transmission. And that requires starting with these. This is a lift kit for my Camaro that I bought early last year. It's meant for the 6th gen, and it's affordable like it should be. Just one problem though. It's incomplete. If you were to put this on your Camaro as it comes right now, your car would immediately start developing problems. The ride would be stiff, braking distance would be increased, and you'd likely not be able to get a proper suspension alignment. Ask me how I know. This cheap lift kit is only part of the equation. We need to find the perfect middle ground between my custom spacer lift and this half-complete one. Something that works right out of the box with no guesswork, no fuss, just something that works for an affordable price. But achieving that goal means we need to test a car out to see what works and what doesn't. And I have a plan for that. But more on that later. Oh, and by the way, if you're a fan of what I'm doing here, I'd like to ask if you could like the video and subscribe, and to send this video to any of your friends that might be interested in something like this. Even if they don't build their own off-road Camaro, they might find all this info useful, or at least somewhat entertaining. If you have any questions about this build, or if you feel like I missed something, please let me know in the comments below. I always read them. Finally, if you'd like to further support me on this journey, I'll also be opening a Patreon page. Every little bit helps, and if we're successful, Patreon members will be eligible to be first in line for the lift kit once it's complete, if we succeed. Among other rewards like behind the scenes content. I do want to make it clear though that I won't be gatekeeping any information on this build behind that Patreon page. Any useful info will be posted here on YouTube for free for you to use in the future as you see fit. Now, let's continue. Now we get to why this project works. I'm putting my whole soul, my whole life basically into this car. So I have to have a damn good reason for believing that it can work. That reason is because we've seen this before. If we look laterally to our friends on two wheels, we'll find that they have had 10 years of experience with builds exactly like this. I am, of course, talking about scramblers. This is my Husqvarna Svartbilen 401. And if anybody here isn't into motorcycles, please stick with me. I promise you there is a point here. Anyway, this is a scrambler. What is a scrambler, you might ask? Well, to answer that, we need to learn a little history. In 1920s England, a new type of sport was taking off. Scrambles, a motorcycle race that seems simple enough. Start in location A and go to location B by any means necessary. Fastest time wins. Think kind of like Burnout Paradise, where you start on one end of the map and it's telling you,
Race northwest to the Crystal Summit Observatory.
you just go whichever way you want. The only thing that mattered was getting to the finish line. Except that instead of a congested city with clearly marked roadways, it was just farmland, English farmland. But there was a problem. The riders competing in these scrambles were finding that their bikes were simply not equipped to deal with the English countryside. Their low exhaust kept getting dented and beat up by rocks, their narrow handlebars made it difficult to get through the various terrain, and their large front fenders kept getting caked with heavy mud. Something needed to change. So these racers got to work on modifying their bikes to better handle the rigors of scrambling. They'd modify them by eliminating any excess weight, whether it was, leather, padding in the seat, fenders, just all sorts of stuff would just be chucked away. Then they would install stuff like knobby tires, higher handlebars, higher exhaust, even longer suspension travel. By the 1960s, these events and the motorcycles that participated in them were popular enough to make their way to America, where off-roaders in California would specifically modify their bikes to make it across the Mojave Desert. Mojave Desert, you get it. Eventually, these bikes started looking closer and closer to their modern counterparts. Scramblers were taking over the world, but unfortunately, the scrambler would become a victim of their own success. Off-road motorcycling had become so ubiquitous that they had to start to develop their own niches. You had dirt bikes if you wanted to race, adventure bikes if you wanted to go long distance, and trail bikes if you wanted to do very technical stuff with the lightest bike possible. As these niches grew, the traditional scrambler kind of just disappeared, a product of a bygone era and a victim of their own success. Scramblers just didn't make sense anymore. But that's not the end of the scrambler story, because in the very early 2010s, somehow, scramblers returned. Custom motorcycle builders had started to make homages, if not outright replicas, of the scramblers of yesteryear. The problem was that those scramblers were pretty expensive. A custom scrambler build back then usually ran around $15,000 to $20,000 just to start, not including the bike. And these custom scramblers were cool, but there was an ingredient missing, a catalyst. It needed that spark, and that catalyst was affordability. All of these motorcycles, as good as they were expensive as hell. But this trend didn't go unnoticed. Ducati had the bright idea to make a mass-produced version of a retro-styled standard motorcycle with added off-road mods. Ducati saw an emerging market here, and they wanted to seize it. And seize it they did, because in 2015, Ducati revealed the Scrambler, with a starting price of $8,000. The Scrambler was no longer just a toy for the rich. The everyday person could buy it and have it. But did this gamble work out for Ducati? Yes, it did. The The Ducati Scrambler was such a smash hit that it didn't just become their best-selling model by far, it was popular enough to start its own market segment, which leads to what I'm sitting on right here, Husqvarna's Scrambler. 10 years later, the building blocks of what a Scrambler is, a retro-styled motorcycle with some mild off-road mods, has stayed the same. And this example is one of the better ones, because I bought this in January of this year with no miles on it for $4,000. Just like the Ducati Scrambler proved 10 years ago, these motorcycles make the most sense at the cheaper end of the spectrum. Now, let's go ahead and clear some things up. Is a Scrambler as good off-road as a dirt bike, a dual sport, or even an adventure bike? No, not really. But it's not the point. They're not meant to be. The purpose of a Scrambler is to give you a retro-styled, well-rounded motorcycle that you can ride every day while still having the ability to go off the beaten path if you so chose. That, right there, is the goal of the Camaro 4x2. The Camaro 4x2 isn't going to be a rock crawler. We are simply taking a car that we like and giving it some mild off-road mods without compromising what makes the Camaro a Camaro. This is also why I believe off-road sports cars and muscle cars like the Camaro 4x2 need to be affordable. We know that internally Ford is making a Mustang Raptor, and I'm sure it'll be cool, but make no mistake, that thing will be $90,000 to start. And with the inevitable dealer markups, you will not find one of those under $100,000. I can guarantee that right now. The Mustang Raptor, like the Porsche Dakar and the Lamborghini Sterrato before it, are missing that crucial ingredient, affordability. The motorcycle world has proven that this type of bike works best at the cheaper end of the spectrum. And I believe it is the same for off-road sports cars and off-road muscle cars. They make the most sense when they are actually affordable. That is why this works. Alright, so we've gone over what the off-road Camaro is, but why would you want one? Who is this car for? Well, like the Scrambler, the purpose of the off-road Camaro is to give you an affordable, well-rounded, daily drivable sports car that has just enough off-road capability to let you go places that you couldn't go before while still staying true to the Camaro's roots. These mods also make this car a much better and more practical daily driver. If you live in a place that has bad, uneven roads laced with potholes, this car might be for you. If you're tired of scraping your car on speed bumps, curbs, or even exiting your friend's driveway, this car might be for you. And if your heart is set on having a Camaro, one that's still fast, handles well, and has a great feeling and reliable 6-speed manual, then this car is for you. The off-road Camaro is designed for people who can only afford one car, and they want a Camaro, one that can do a little bit of everything. So now I've given you what this is, I've told you why I wanted to do it, why it makes sense. The only question left is how we are going to prove it. We are going to the Texas Overland Trail. We are starting near Kingsland, Texas, working our way up to Mason, and then working our way back down to Fredericksburg, Texas. And all the while, we are going to be dealing with dirt roads, water crossings, as well as the biggest obstacle that the Texas Overland Trail has to offer, the James River crossing. That is how we're going to prove that the off-road Camaro works. So join me on this trip to prove that the off-road Camaro deserves to be made, as well as to test all the stuff I have on this so far. That way you can build this yourself without breaking the bank and without wrecking your only ride. The off-road sports car deserves to be something more than just a toy for the rich. It deserves to be a car that can be had by everyone, and we are going to prove it. My name is TheSixSpeed, and I'll see you on the road. I've had people tell me what I'm doing is risky, and they're right, it is. But if I'm going to be making this lift kit, I want to do it right. 4x4 vehicles recommended. Enter at your own risk. We may be able to read, but that isn't going to stop us. This is our first step. 200 miles on the Texas Overland Trail. Yeah, that shit don't affect me nothing. I've never seen anyone try something like this with these kinds of stakes. If this doesn't work, if it all fails, it all comes down on me. Ah, fuck. I can almost hear them struggle. The reality of what I'm about to do is kind of hitting me right now. This is my car, my personal car, my daily driver. Not only do I have a lot in this financially, but also in this emotionally. We only have an hour of daylight left. It's kind of do or die. No one is going to care about your ride more than you. You deserve a lift kit that's been tested by someone who loves their Camaro as much as you do. That's always been the goal. Not just to make something cool, but to share that with people. That's why I'm doing this. Because if not me, then who will? Still with me? Good. Sweet tea for good luck. If you've made it to the end of this video, seriously, thank you for watching. I would have gotten this video out a lot earlier, but I'm just a one-man show here. I've done all the filming and editing myself, and that's with 90% of this video being edited on my phone. Because this is my first video, I don't have a backlog to recommend you yet, but I can recommend videos from other channels that I think you might like. That's all I got. I'll see you in the next one. 6 out.